1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to this week's episode of It's Not a Sport, Season 3, Episode 3. So we got a good show today, as always. I'm going to talk about GameStop. I think they're pretty relevant right now, as long as some news and my short take on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So let's get into it with esports, starting with the Overwatch League. In playoffs, the standings currently are Seoul Dynasty is in first, followed by Philadelphia Fusions, then New York, then Shanghai, Paris, Atlanta, San Francisco, Hangzhou, London, Vancouver, Guangzhou Chargers, Los Angeles Gladiators, Dallas, Houston, Toronto, Chengdu, Los Angeles Valiants, Florida, Washington, and last place is Boston Uprising. In League of Legends LPL, the current standings are still the same from last week. I don't think they've played any games, and their playoffs are still undecided. But in LCK, I know they have been playing some. Genji is still in first, followed by T1, and then Dragon X are also all tied for first. Then KT Roster, then Damwon, Afrika Freaks, Hangwon, and APK are tied for 7th. Sandbox Gaming and Griffin are tied for 10th. Currently also, their playoffs are to be decided, and LEC, which is the European League, their playoffs are underway, with G2 winning against Mad Lions in round 1, followed by Fnatic winning against Origins in round 1, and then Misfits losing against Rogue in round 1. Moving into round 2 was Fnatic against Mad Lions, which 3-0'd them. Origins against Rogue, which 3-1'd them, Origins did. And then in the quarterfinals, we had Origins versus G2, and G2 won 3-1. And I believe the finals should be held this week. In LCS, in round 1, we had Cloud9 versus 100 Thieves, who 3-0'd 100 Thieves. Then Evil Genius versus FlyQuest. Evil Genius won. Then FlyQuest versus the Golden Guardians. FlyQuest won. And 100 Thieves versus TSM. TSM won. In the quarterfinals, we had Cloud9 versus Evil Genius, and Cloud9 won 3-1. And then FlyQuest versus TSM, and FlyQuest won 3-2. And this week we should also have the finals for LCS Spring Split. In ESL Pro, the standings are, I believe, the same as last week, with Fnatic in first, followed by Astrals, and then Mouse Sports, and then Navi, and then FaZe Clan in 5th, and OG in 6th. Next up are your games to look forward to for the rest of the month. Last Friday, we had the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I will talk about in a bit. We had Dead by Daylight come out on the iOS and Android. We have a Predator game coming out on the 24th. We have Trials of Mana coming out on the 24th. XCOM, Chimera Squad coming out on the 24th. Gears Tactics coming out on the 28th. Sakura Wars coming out on the 28th. And Showrunner coming out on the 28th on the last of the month. So, what are some news that came out this week? Nothing really noteworthy. It's been confirmed in quotes that Capcom is remaking Resident Evil 4, which I guess is cool. It's one of the games I don't think a lot of people want because it's been ported to a lot of different consoles and it's not that old. It's like, I think 15 years old. Came out on the GameCube originally, so it's old, but it's not extremely like you don't have to emulate it, I think, is what people are saying. So they're not really wanting a remake of Resident Evil 4, which is one of the favorite Resident Evils. But they said before that would come out, Resident Evil 9 would come out before they make another remake. And the other thing that comes to mind is just Animal Crossing, I believe, got banned in China. The Animal Crossing content has been very interesting, seeing it develop since it's come out. So I'm not surprised that that game would get banned in China. So that's kind of it for the news for this week. It's been really slow, especially with the COVID-19. A lot of games I would probably expect are just getting delayed or slowly worked on. I'm going to do an episode on Valorant. That's the closed beta happened a while ago, as long as some other things. Next week's show will probably be Final Fantasy Remake review, which we're going to dive right into just some of my thoughts with it. Mostly, overall, I'm really enjoying the remake. They really did a fantastic job flushing out a lot of characters that just got skipped over in the original, that being Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. After really the first part of Midgard, they're just kind of gone, and you just never see them again. Same with Aerith, just like your little side quest that you go with Aerith. My biggest concerns or problems with the game is, one, the camera and content, the camera and combat took a lot to get used to. In my opinion, it's very close to the character, and it's incredibly hard to see. I think combat as a whole is also kind of problematic, where it's not as fluent as it should be. Like, so let's say Dark Souls, the game wants you to block defensively and block all the moves rather than roll, of course. But if you're in an attack animation, you can't just immediately go block. There's no animation cancel for that. So it's very hard and sluggish for that to work in combat. My other last big major concern, just off the top of my head, is just it being on console. I don't know why Square makes these games for console, especially the PS4, because they look like and kind of run like trash, honestly. The game will feel fine if you're like a regular console player, but if you're like a PC player, you'll just notice things. Like it kind of feels like it's choppy at times. 30 FPS, it feels like. The backgrounds in the fucking and just textures just look horrendous compared to what it could be on PC, and it's just the downside of just being on console, really. The game itself is fantastic, and overall I recommend that you definitely pick it up. I think it's probably one of the contenders for Game of the Year this year, at least for me. I'm loving the remake so far. I'm loving everything they do with it, and I'm going to stop here because the full review will be out in the near future. So anyway, our main topic this week is GameStop. Let's get into that talk right about now. So for this episode, I want to talk about one of the biggest retail giants in the gaming industry, GameStop, or they were, and how they kind of fell and why they're becoming very obsolete. So let's start with kind of their history and how they've survived so long. So GameStop, it was back, I would say, in the early years of gaming, the early 2000s, they showed up. They were actually a different company, and then I believe they got merged into GameStop. So then from there, they would sell games over the counter. You go to GameStop and you say, "Hey, I would buy this game," and they would give it to you, and then you have the physical disc of the game, and then you would go, play it. And much like other big blockbusters, like literally Blockbuster, was killed out by Netflix, and we see a lot of retail stores and malls. If you go to a mall today, it's pretty much dead because of Amazon. The same thing has been slowly happening to GameStop. And how GameStop has survived so long is not only did they take a percentage when they sold the game over the counter. Again, like right now, if you buy a game from PlayStation Store or from Steam or whatever, Valve takes 30% of no matter what purchase. So they always take 30%, which is why we see like them making and pushing for more expensive things, like, oh, buy the deluxe edition and you get all this or whatever. Because at the end of the day, game developers are only making like 40 something dollars from their game instead of that full 60. So that's fine, that's all good. But so GameStop took a percentage of that out when they sold the game. And then they would also how they survived for so long is because they would reuse games. You could go to GameStop and sell them your game or your Xbox or whatever, and we all know the memes, and they would give you shit back, but then they could resell that at a higher price. So they would kind of flip games, I guess you could say. So they would sell used games and used consoles, and that's how they really survived and made their money. Then, because again, as we see now, it's the decline and the decline and the decline, they started to sell like action figurines. They started to your magazine was with your subscription at GameStop if you had a subscription, and they did all these things really just to survive, and these things really, I think, did help them survive as long as they did. But overall, their efforts were futile. They just did not really last, and now they're really in a big decline right now. So from there, last about a year ago, I believe I did an episode or reported on it in the news. GameStop decided to take a different approach for all their stores, because no one really goes to get physical copies anymore, and if they do, then they order it from the retailer themselves, or they get it from Amazon. So about a year ago, I would say, they announced that they wanted their stores to be like esports centers. Essentially, like if you live here in Chicago, if you've ever been to a night gaming lounge or a gaming lounge of any kind, where it's like you just go and there's PCs everywhere, and you can just sit down and you pay for X amount of time and then you just play your game. GameStop wanted to do that, but for esports for all their stores. So they wanted it to be like if Riot came to Chicago again, instead of holding their competitions at some theater or whatever, they would hold it at their local GameStop. And that's where the tournament would be held. Or like CSGO came to some random remote place, they would hold it at the GameStop, and that's how they'd be held. So that's what they announced. That's what their plan of attack was. Since then, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it actually probably died out a lot. I believe one of their magazines died as well that they were hosting. I want to say Game Informer passed away like a while ago. Pardon me, it didn't shut down now that I remember. It was just a lot of layoffs. What actually shut down recently was the Microsoft magazine that they had since the original PS1 or Xbox One. That shut down. But the Game Informer has had a lot of layoffs, but that's helped kept GameStop in the game for as long as it's had as well. So now, with the recent COVID-19 outbreak, they were trying to keep open stores, which was extremely dangerous, with this virus spreading around. And eventually they shut down, and I think they had to shut down about 300 stores across the country permanently. And that's kind of all she wrote for GameStop. So it's kind of sad to see GameStop go, but it is to be expected as the world pushes more towards just convenience and digital, like just pushing it to being digital. That's just gonna how it goes. We saw it this fall with Blockbuster. Blockbuster was huge. You would go there, you could rent your games, you would rent your movies, you would rent your porn, I guess, if you wanted that. There's like no Blockbusters around because when Netflix came out, what was the point of Blockbuster? Why would I go down the street and rent a movie where if I don't deliver it back on time, or if it's damaged, then I get I get screwed. I gotta pay a fee, where I can pay Netflix a subscription and they mail the movie to me. Remember, that's how Netflix started. They mailed the movie to you, and then you could keep it for as long as you want, and then when you're done, you mail it right back. And eventually Netflix pushed in the streaming market, and here we are today, where it's the modern Netflix that you know and love, where you can just turn on your PlayStation, turn on your phone, turn on your computer, turn on your TV, your tablet, your Switch, whatever, and you can just watch yourself some Netflix and watch whatever's on there. And that was the fall of Blockbuster, and then we can see the same for retail. Currently, there's very few Best Buys around in Chicago. There's still a good amount, but there's not a lot. You go to malls. Malls are pretty dead, pretty empty right now because, well, Amazon exists. Amazon started out as a book company. They would just, rent you books. And now they give you everything. Anything you want, you can order on Amazon, and boom, there it is in your doorstep within like 3 days, which is ridiculous. So the same thing is going to happen to GameStop and happening to the gaming market, especially with these subscriptions coming in, where we're kind of seeing the same thing with Netflix, where why would I go buy this $60 games where I could pay $15 a month for the Xbox Game Pass and get all these games that are pretty much already used, you can say, and just play as much as I want for as long as I want, as long as I pay the subscription? Why would I leave my house and go pick up this disc that can be scratched, can be broken, can be destroyed, when I can just download the gigs from my, online, and it just comes on my PlayStation, and boom, bada beep, there I go. So it's very interesting to see the kind of the rise and fall of GameStop. It's probably it's still there, but within next year, especially with this virus, they're gonna have a tough time. And to see them survive as long as they have, and see if they can go longer, it'd probably be a fun gambling thing to do with your friends, honestly. Overall, personally, it's kind of sad to see GameStop go, at least for me. They've been around since like the beginning, since I started playing. I just remember like going in the store and purchasing Modern Warfare 2 for like the first time. I really wonder how long they can last, especially with how this virus has hit them and all the stores that they've closed, and now just the bad rep that they've gotten. I know Reggie, who was the previous president of Nintendo of America, got on their board like at the beginning of this year. And I was hoping maybe that would turn them around a little bit, but honestly, it doesn't look like it. It's sad to see GameStop go, but it's really just part of the circle of life now. And, well, just the moral of the story is you should honestly just be buying your games online now. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of It's Not a Sport. I hope you enjoyed this week's talk and information and you learned something overall. If you want to listen to all of our past shows, being the previous seasons 1 and 2, they are up on our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us on our Instagram, It's Not a Sport to You, and check out our website, itsnotasport.com. If you have any topics you want me to discuss, feel free to contact us on our Instagram or through our email. That's going to conclude this week's show. I hope you're having a wonderful climb. This has been your host, Salty Waffles, signing off.